Well, hello everybody. I just finished a Zoom this morning very early out west here, and it was Eastern time, but started at 7:30 my time, so I did that, and it was exceptional. It was with Richard Albert and a whole host of incredible academic minds from all over the world. And the topics were extensive. It was extensive, mostly a focus on USA and the problems of America in constitutionalism and how they compare that with other countries. And it was scary, folks. It was scary, people looking at Australia and thinking that, well, they got an elected Senate. It's a perfect system. Except it's not. Whether it's elected or appointed, when it comes to Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, doesn't matter if the Senate's appointed or elected by you folks. In Canada, we don't elect our Senate. It's appointed by the Prime Minister. But there's one unifier with those three countries, folks, is that our shared Senates are all one and the same. Doesn't matter how many senators you have, in what constituencies or overlaps, they are all sworn absolutely in all three countries to the Prime Minister. The Crown. They all have an oath. They get elected or they get appointed, and they walk in there and they swear an oath, and that oath is Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the UK, and I promise to fulfill my role to that end. Well, in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, since 1952, that translates to Prime Minister, his crown or her crown. Ooh, I almost lost everybody. Wonder if I got zappoled there. Hope not. Not good, guys. Okay, so that crown, it's kind of weird time. That crown that they're all sworn to is Governor General. All three countries, that's Prime Minister's crown, his highest crown, in charge of the absolute King's Court, the Supreme Court of Canada. Absolutely. Only in Canada. I don't know. I don't like it at all. Full bars connected. I don't know why it's doing that. Makes you wonder, I don't know. But I did this geopolitics, and I get worried about Americans, especially American academics, who states better, and they think that somehow a model from the Commonwealth is a better model. Well, folks, when you compare the United States just hit left, right, and center, losing people too. I think I'm going to shut the video off, go to town, see what I got going on there. It's says I got lots of bars. I don't know why I'd be doing that. I don't know. Makes you wonder, and it's frustrating as heck. We'll see. It says I got lots of bars, folks, but I don't know. Don't trust anything anymore these days. But American wars, just in the history of how many wars Americans have fought, and they have fought a lot in their history. How many wars against communism and how many wars against Crown? 16 versus 6. America has been in 6 military altercations with communists. That's it. And very low mortality rate too. There, let's try that. Let's see. It says my internet connection's restored. Let's see. I hope it's good. Very, very frustrating, folks. So, American wars, 16 against monarchies, only 6 against communism, and the massive life lost by Americans against colonials, crown monarchies, monumentous, not the least of which the Civil War, attributed to monarchies, the Spanish-American War, the French-American War, the War of Independence against the British, the Mexican-Spanish War versus America, World War I America, World War II America, vast amount of wealth and life lost by Americans fighting colonialism, fighting constitutional monarchies who have been the worst thing to ever poison the American people. And now today we see in the last years America shifting to fighting all of these conflicts in communist states, small altercations, not huge losses of life, but they are all against monarchies, and they're all against communists and communist countries who broke free from crowns. What made America switch post 1945? What made them switch? Well, we see the Cold War, the new power of the Soviet Union. Maybe that's got something to do with it. But I think it's more to do with the rebuild of the British Empire post-1945. They were decimated by Germany. They made a deal with the States, then Teddy Roosevelt, to end all colonialism and for all Axis powers. They absolutely had to capitulate, and they were held to it. You can watch imposed constitutionalism and what all the Allies did in creating new constitutions, decolonization, which seemingly started to be a thorn in USA's side, which I don't understand when it's imposed on all the Axis powers, but anyone on the Ally side is allowed to go free and clear and continue on. And especially now in 2021, when you look at the executive power of presidency in the United States of America, it's the number one source of the problems that now, since at least World War II, considerably years after, in the 50s, we watch America transition into working for these monarchies, specific monarchies in the United Nations Security Council, which historically is not constitutional for the United States of America. And it's interesting that America keeps moving that way and wanting to adopt those systems against their constitution. And why I bring it up is Canada's design gives regionalism through federalism to the provinces. Under 1867, it's Section V, but they call it Section 58. You can look it up. It talks about provincial constitutionalism and the power of the Crown to make that so through any elected premier. You can go through that for and by the people of any said region in Canada. All provinces and absolutely the territories. But not one has. And I have not seen any political parties come forward, none whatsoever, any candidates that wish to cement that in their platform, at least here in the province of Alberta. Lots of candidates, but I don't see not one candidate say, hey, you know what? We should get rid of that unlimited executive power and cement for the people real constitutionalism. They want to stay with the crown. They want to stay with that crown power, removing all the rights of the people of every province. Forever and a day, we've never had any. Now, USA, comparatively, they have all those rights cemented regionally. And then when we were getting into Senate today, when you look at Senate designs, if you were to go independent, you would want a Senate that is equality of the person. How do you get that? Well, you definitely don't give metropolises or densely populated cities extra senators for the executive power, or else you divide city and rural and you ruin it. It is why USA is so powerful today. You see this also in Russia. Russia and USA are probably the most powerful federalisms in the entire world. And it's a very, very small club. Canada is a federalism, but it's extremely limited. We're not a real federalism until we cement provincial constitutions and define the power of provincial governments for the people in absolutely all your civil rights that not one Canadian has, not cemented in any way, shape, or form. These are your education, your health care, your property rights, probably the hugest thing that probably should take 30% of the Constitution written just in property rights. Another 15% on average should be your water rights, and then how that's utilized. But there is none of that in any province in Canada, meaning the people not only have no civil rights, which are most of your human rights, by the way. If you don't believe me, just go to the United States of America. They will teach you all about civil rights, the civil rights movement, which are monumental works in human rights. American Indian has monumental achievements in civil rights, which are monumental achievements in human rights. Same with African Americans since slavery till today, all the way through all of segregation and much, much more abuses. And you will get into education and segregation, the rest of it. You can look at all the monumental civil rights, division of powers, state powers that are the same division of powers as are outlined in Canada. You can look at the 1867 two-thirds component of your Constitution. Under V, there's 1, 2, 3, then there's V with the Roman numeral 1 before it for the 4, and then there's V, and then it keeps going on. That is the 1867 two-thirds of your legal Constitution. Rules of governance, how you're governed, and accountability, which there is none. There could be. If you had provincial constitutionalism, there could be a good level of accountability, but until you do that, you have an absolute autocratic machine running you forever and a day. Forever and a day. And the only real rights you have in Canada are the right to vote, which, like, it was interesting that they don't have that right in the United States, but they have the equality of person. Where Canada, there is no equality of person. There is the first class, and that's it. And through legislation, they've defined the savage Indian. And then you, the low-life degenerate slave class, third class, you're defined there too. And only in Crown customary law, privy of the Privy Council under His Highness Omnipotence Prime Minister, secret cabinet, all parties who ascend there, federally and then the provincial ministry under Premier, they have all these secret privies that you're not to be made aware of. That's why it's Crown customary law, meaning unwritten law, or at least, kind of like mafia where they got their secret black little ledger. And you see old movies where they look for those secret ledgers. Might be something like that available in Canada, kind of like the Catholic Church and the government on residential school genocide. Probably is there somewhere, but how are we going to get to it when they've applied customary Crown law to keep it sequestered, secret from all of society, who is not listed or named in any constitution, none whatsoever. Our Federal Constitutional Act of Canada does not cement any of you in any way, shape, or form. Now, in 1982, people asked me about the Charter. There's a group asking me to come talk at the legislature, and I'm not going to do it. I looked at the group and the anti-vax, and then one fellow up there going, oh, no vaccines, none whatsoever. There's no such thing as disease. The government created it. Well, I'm going to say it again. I don't want to see people with AIDS infecting other people because they don't believe it's real. I don't believe in any of that. There's a strong argument for vaccination in many, many diseases. And if you didn't live through polio or many, many other things like smallpox, you want those vaccines. They are lifesavers. When you lose a whole bunch of your children, you quickly switch. I know at least my parents were alive and well during that in their childhood. They know all about it, all about it. Most people from that generation will not argue those concepts. And if people are too young to know any better, that's not my problem. Be ignorant, be dumb. But if you ignore history, you will repeat it. And I'm not going to repeat any of those things, not in my life anyway, not for my children. I know the value of things, but provincial constitutionalism, folks, cementing the rights for everybody. The charter is not any kind of roadmap to your rights. Before and after the charter is a list of the crown power over the charter, and then the reaffirmation post the charter that says, hey, look, it's subject to the Prime Minister and the crown that he possesses, which is Governor General, as well as what he pushes on the premiers through lieutenant governors. The premiers are autocratic. They love their autocratic authority, so they allow this double dealing in customary crown law. But it is codified, telling you that they can do this legally. They tell you that that's the accountability. They are accountable to only themselves, not you. And they interpret, at least at the highest level, Prime Minister. Prime Minister decides for you how those rights will be applied or not applied or be removed at any given day of the week, subject to his or her whims. This is the power of kings. Forever and a day it was the argument made by Robin of Locksley, the story of Robin Hood. For all those who don't seem to like history, the story of Robin Hood is the story of the Magna Carta. And who makes the king honor those rights and freedoms given to the people? Who makes the king honor it? The answer is nobody. The king has the military. The king has the courts. The king has the sheriff, the police. The king controls everything, and the king decides when and where those rights will be applied to you or not, usually for the king's own benefit. If it doesn't benefit the king, you're not going to get it. They will twist it, remove it, change it, reword it, rewrite it in their mind, and apply it to you without anybody's say in any democratic process, none whatsoever. And I'm going to repeat this, folks. Until we do provincial constitutions, there will never be any of the promises of autonomy, sovereignty, or any of the other claims people make, because you're always limiting everything to that royal highness of a premier who is subject to nobody or nothing. There will never be any recall legislation in the crown system. Anyone telling you that they're going to legislate that act and that it will be enforceable is a liar, because it's contrary to the Constitutional Act of 1867 consolidated with 1982. People talking about Bill of Rights and charters are not worth the paper they're written on, because they will only ever be enforceable if the elected prime minister says they are. And all premiers will go with whatever the prime minister says, as long as the prime minister allows them their ultimate autocratic power through lieutenant governor, appointed by Governor General, who is sworn forever and a day to the prime minister, who is appointed by the prime minister. This system we inherited from Great Britain, England of its time in 1867, was a division like this. The crown is Governor General, Lieutenant Governor, and other crown positions. And what it was is a monarchy in a far-off land could interject on a corrupt prime minister, a corrupt parliament, or a corrupt senate. You, the people, could actually grab your pen, got it, and you could write a letter, and you could send it to the monarchy. This went all the way up to 1952. You used to be able to do that. My great-grandparents, when they were pissed off, they could write the governor general, or in the province, write the lieutenant governor and say, listen, this is happening on my farm. This natural gas went through, la, la, la. I've had this property since this day, and this is what the government provincially is doing to me. Or to the governor general and said, and the federal government's imposing this works to go through my land, and I'm going to lose this much farmland. And they say that's the... And then they could interject on the prime minister and shut them down, or the parliament, or through lieutenant governor shut a premier down, or block them in their legislation and not stamp their bill. You used to be able to do it. Now, when you write your letter, you're ratting yourself out to either the premier through your lieutenant governor. You're ratting yourself out saying, I want you to do this. Well, they're sworn to the premier. So you see how now, since 1952, the premier has taken absolute autocratic power of that crown power, the customary crown law that's codified in rules of governance, how to govern since 1867, not designed to be privy of the premier. Now, and it isn't because they're sworn to the governor general, but for the premier to get their autocratic powers, they only have to kiss butt to the prime minister. They only have to enrich the prime minister. And the prime minister has the power over the governor general, who before 1952 was a British royal family, where again you could say, oh, the prime minister is making an act. Don't you sign that act because it does this, this, this. This is how it affects me. But now when you go to the governor general rats you out to the prime minister, whom he or she is sworn to, and then they turn around and beat the shit out of you in legislation and make it worse on you, and then they target you, freeze your bank accounts, take your property, arrest you, fine you astronomical amounts of money, whatever the prime minister wants to do. And I promise you folks, all premiers, regardless of political party, that's a joke, will do the same thing. Because as long as they make the prime minister happy, they can rape, pillage, plunder you, commit all kinds of atrocious crimes, civil rights violations to the maximum, as they have forever and a day since 1867. It was bad enough during the Crown era. They used populism, the political will of the people. If it was popular with the people, whether it was a human rights violation or not, they didn't care. Whatever they could trick the people into doing, they would. Just the same as Nazi Germany. This is the problem with monarchies. They have populism, and they also have the ability to trick you and institutionalize you and trick you into thinking that you're democratic or you're free. You're not. You're none of those things. There are no civil rights, none whatsoever, cemented in Canada ever at all. And they're only subject to your absolute autocracy through prime minister and premier if they want to. If they don't want to, they don't have to. They only have to work with each other. Big crown, small crown. That's all there is. And it's a broken system. Since 1952, it's even probably worse than the original 1867 League of Nations style crown colonialism of Age of Empires. It's probably worse because you have a vast amount of autocratic power. We are the illusion of democracy, a fraud, a scam, a trick on the people. Anyone not bringing forward provincial constitutionalism is just another crown hypocrite and will only continue to breed the same kind of governance here in Canada. And it's scary. It's scary, folks. I don't know what to tell you. I fight hard in academia as I did this morning with incredible minds. I enjoyed sharing what little knowledge I could. And then they reciprocated, they're like, well, I guess that's true, equality of Senate. And one spectacular academic even said he lost the very debate that I debate on the side. He lost because he wanted that power of Senate to be not equal, where he wanted big cities to have more senators. And I said, well, that would destroy America. The strength of USA is in the equality of state, big or small, the equality of the rural American versus the equality of the city slicker, so to speak. Those are the words I use, and it's true. And constitutionally, the equality of person. You don't want to find yourself as a farmer, like in Canada, losing all your rights, especially when they changed the goalposts. Like a lot of farmers allowed oil companies to put wells in their property. You're to get a royalty for that, because you're definitely not farming that land. There's a pump there, and they're pumping resources on the ground. You're to get paid a royalty. Well, the government changed the goalposts and said, no, we're taking all that money away. The royalties away from you and filling our pockets. And then we're going to bill the taxpayer who supposedly owns the resources. That's the other thing in Section 92, folks. Section 92 holds your resources. Alberta had to fight harder than any other province to get those. Alberta was not bestowed any power of its resources like every other confederated province. Unequal provinces. That's how it's always been in Canada. There's those that are deemed omnipotent, and then there's those who are deemed the boot. Even in class structure, there's also class structure of regions. So it can be worse. You can be a third-class citizen in a third-class province, or a third-class territory, or a savage territory. Think about that. Even worse. And the crime rates prove my point, especially when you analyze Alaska versus Yukon versus Northwest Territory versus Inuvik. Look at it. It'll blow you away. You wonder, what the hell's going on here? Well, that's called what happens when you don't have regional constitutions. People say, well, look, the crime rates are real low in Canada versus the USA. And I go, not true. There may be higher death rates in some respects. Some ways it's double comparatively to some cities in Canada. But think about this, folks. Imagine if you had an equalization system where all rural Americans had to transfer vast amounts of their wealth to all the major cities. And the cities had full control, and you were subsidizing everybody in the cities. You'd have a lower crime rate because you'd be paying for everybody's misfortunes and personal choices and corruptions of morality. That's what Canada does. Now you can argue and say, well, that's terrific. But then you look at rural crime rates in Canada versus rural crime rates in the United States, and you see the inverse. The inverse. It's crazy. It's crazy, right? But that's the equality of person. And that's the difference. There is no equality of person in Canada. It's the inequality of person in Canada. And more so than that, the class structure is also regionally too. They regionally class structure provinces and territories inside this confederation. It's sick. It's wrong. It's, people say it's a great model. I guess centralization can be a great model. I guess. I don't know. It's not a great system I want to be in. That's for sure. I like the idea of what I can contribute to society rewards me in society, and I don't think somebody should define where I'm going to be in society by my birth instead of by how much knowledge I have or how hard I work, how hard I try to make my life better. There has to be a reward for that. And systems that don't have a reward, that's never going to fly. It's never going to work. And it's probably why, per person per capita, the provinces and territories have such a massive, massive deficit, slave debt upon the people of Canada regionally. You can't even look at the states. It's not even comparable. There's no equivalency there. Then you look at federal. Well, there's somewhat of a equivalency, but the problem is America is designed geopolitically, meaning internationally, that whatever federal debt they take on, they have already bought and sold the equivalent in foreign debt. So they're always zeroed out federally. America, the United States of America, is the most wealthiest nation in the world. Or is everything great about America? No. But it could be a lot worse. It could be a Canada, an illusion of democracy, or a pretend UN sustainable development, unsustainable development. We're seeing that. Look at the housing crisis. I can tell you all, folks, as I continue on my path with Florida, I'm quite a bit through it now. I'm pretty excited about that. I'm into forums now. A trip to Florida is going to happen here this fall. And, as I go for my sponsorship, finish my last 2 forums. Scary. I get scared that somehow it's not going to work out. But you have to be brave. You got to see it through. I get scared that, oh, man, imagine if I'm sent back to Canada by Christmas because nothing worked or I didn't get my forms done in time. But we'll see. I think I'm going to get it. And if I don't, then I guess it's regroup in the spring and go back at her. But I sure hope that doesn't happen. I can't be fearful. I must continue forward. I hope Canadians start to look at provincial constitutionalism formed by the people, which means all the people over the age of 18 in real conventions, provincially, right across the board. I would love to give this to Canadians federally and provincially just by taking Prime Minister in a minority. You can destroy the crown as a minority Prime Minister. If Justin Trudeau wasn't a piece of shit and corrupt and self-proclaimed God that his daddy taught him to be, he could be a good guy in this minority government. And tomorrow, promise all of you that within 30 days he'd have all the crown positions fired and that all the new appointments would all be sworn to you, the people. And we could start constitutional conventions. Any prime minister-elect can do that in the minority. But poor folks in Canada don't even read their constitutional act. Poor folks in Canada don't want to even know their crown. They don't. They got some delusion that it's the United Kingdom. The Jay Treaty, 1794, I'm going toe-to-toe with the United States of America in 1 week's time. It's going to the UN Secretariat. I got their email too. So things are looking really good. And I've done it before once in my political aspirations over the last 5 years. And it did go through to everybody. And I'm going to hit this. I'm going to tag all the Canadian Indian chiefs that we have on board right now. Much more to go, but that takes time as we go through the residential school. Genocide won't be completed in a year. It will take many, many years, in fact. But I can tell you folks this, that next week's huge. And the Jay Treaty, for anyone still clinging to the United Kingdom, go read the Canadian Encyclopedia, written in November 2020 by one Chief Justice Wagner. Not only the Supreme Court's highest justice, but was the interim Governor General of Canada. He rewrote a lot of things in Canada to his credit, and he rewrites the Jay Treaty definition in Canada and highlights 1956, 4 years after the Liberals and Conservatives stole the crown completely and put it on their own heads and went, shh, don't tell any Canadians. He highlights that in 1956, Canada said to the Jay Treaty, for all Canadians who haven't read that document, it's the oldest treaty between Great Britain and the United States of America over Canada. The Canadian Indians, in part Canadian Indians, able to go to the United States become special immigrants if they so choose. It's still alive and well today, I know, because I'm going through the immigration process. If I was at least Métis or an absolute treaty Indian or even an unceded Indian with a letter from a chief, and I could prove my blood, at least 50% that of those First Peoples, guess what happens? You get automatic immigration to the United States under special immigrant, the highest of all special immigrants. And the United States is still recognizing that today. They don't require you to have any passport to cross the border. You're allowed to freely go and come to the U.S. They don't even enforce, folks, they don't even force anything on the American Indian over claiming the goods that you bring back, whereas Canada does. There's a huge amount on this for the Algonquin, as I'm going through right now, an Algonquin who is arrested on the reserve crossing the border. Now, Treaty 7 Alberta, they haven't gone through this yet, but I'm sure the government of Canada will get there, especially with gun bans now. And there was a big fight in 2011 for the Algonquin where they arrested a chief who crossed the border, got some goods, brought it back, and he refused to claim and pay the duty to Canada. He said, I'm sorry, I'm under the J Treaty. Fuck you. So they arrested him. They have a post there. They on the reserve, Canada's Indian Affairs and the Indian Agent, they have a large immigration facility put there to watch Canadian Indians, at least of the Algonquin in upper and lower Canada, and try to catch them taking goods back and forth. Even though the USA says you can't do that, we won't allow you to do that. The Canadian Indian is one with the American Indian. There's no boundary for them. There's no boundary. This is one people's. You don't do that to them. But Canada says, well, fuck you. We're not Britain anymore. We're the Crown. It's written there for you all to read that they've tossed out that treaty and they've said, we won't honor it. So for all Canadian Indians, there is no UK Crown running Canada anymore. As I've told you all, federal provincial Crown land, meaning federal provincial government, meaning Prime Minister and said premiers in a division of powers outlined in your Constitution. Reiterated again in 1982, repatriated, but the Crown positions are controlled by Prime Minister. They're all his or hers, whomever Canadians and First Peoples elect or choose not to elect, doesn't matter. It's imposed on you forever and a day. If you believe any of your treaties are safe, I can assure you they're not. The J Treaty proves beyond all reasonable doubt that the British treaty with the United States of America, honored and cemented by the United States of America forever for all the American Indians and all the Canadian Indians, Métis and Inuit. Oh, my power, I gotta plug this in, sorry folks, real quick. There we go. But for all the Canadian Indians, Métis and Inuit at the 50% blood, will always be allowed to immigrate, work, and do whatever they want in the United States of America without being stopped or without being persecuted and get a special status. But not in Canada. Never in Canada. Now, we see Cascadia, which is unceded British Columbia. And we see American Indians able to go there. They had to prove their status. They had to prove it in the Supreme Court of Canada. They were allowed. But that's because that's Canadian Indian War territory. Unceded Canadian land. Cascadia, Canada has wiped out 21 First Peoples. They're no longer in existence. They're extinct. Canada did that. The same people are alive and well today in Washington and California. All of them. None of them are extinct. Americans had American Indian Wars too. They haven't had any American Indian Wars since 1924. It's over. Since then, they went through civil rights with the American Indian, repatriation done, nation within a nation, federalism bestowed upon every chief. Every chief in the United States of America is the equivalent of a state governor. They have 135% more land than all 40 million Canadian, Inuit, Métis, and Treaty Indians, unceded Indians in Canada. All of us combined, they have more land. People say, what? Only 13% of Canada is made available to all Canadians and all First Peoples. 0.2% goes to the Reserve Indian, and almost 10% goes to Canadians. That's it. Your country is extremely small. In fact, if I took that large province, Ontario, and its population, there's less made available than Florida, 29 million people. Floridians have more space per person per capita than Ontario. It's why Toronto has explosive house prices and all these boroughs are popped up, because nobody's allowed to live, earn a living, or exploit any of the lands. And in fact, the government has sold highways to foreign governments, former colonials, to administer taxes on you. There's your crown. There's the sickness of the crown. You can't even drive to one another without paying a toll. It's insane. It's nuts. And that's unceded land stolen, and it's through American Indian Wars currently alive and well today. Cascadia, Upper Lower Canada, Caledonia. Caledonia is all the same thing as BC. It's Canadian Indian War. No, they're not shooting everybody down, but they fly helicopters. They have police constantly stationed there. They impose their will. They arrest people. They harass people. They don't ever let them build or have anything there. They continually push them around. Now, these people have resisted since the dawn of Confederation, but how long can you be in a state of war? And most people don't even know. But the RCMP are military police. They're designed just like Nazi Germany. It's the only police force in the world today that's on that build. It was made before Nazi Germany, but Nazi Germany made the SS just like the RCMP, same model. You will be provincial, you will be municipal, you'll be provincial, you'll be federal, you'll be military police. All one police force with all the powers to utilize whenever you want. And that's what they do. And that's what Canada does. So people look at it and they say, oh, it's just police. No, it's military police. In that respect, on the Wet'suwet'en and others, and when you go to the Six Nations for Caledonia, that's exactly what it's being utilized as. Might as well just call it what it is. Canadian Indian War. That's what it is. That's why it's called unceded. Hasn't been settled. You have to fight for it. So Canada does. Quietly. Not to activate the international community. America's long past this. Oh, coming on 100 years past this. But Canada still goes on and nobody says nothing. Canadians don't understand. Well, why would they? Got no civil law, or civics, sorry. You got no civics, which means you have no real human rights. You're not in your Constitution. It's not we the people. It's me, the divine politician, and how I will act over you. And the only one recognized in the Constitution legally, folks, not figuratively or literally, I mean legally written, is the divine first-class politician. None of you exist. You're just slaves on the land. That's the truth. They can change your property rights anytime they want, and they do. We all know it's true. Businesses, corporations are all in the division of powers too. That's a huge one. That's in Section 92. But nothing cemented by law. It's how they were able to crush all the small businesses during the pandemic. crush them. It's how Jason Kenney, for example, was able to rob all the royalties from all the rural farmers who are left with all the destruction to their property. Nobody's going to fill in those wells. That's your problem now. Oh, and by the way, you don't get any royalties for those ones operating. Oh, and we're handing you a major tax bill, too. And hopefully you can't afford it, and we can steal your land from you legally. Sick, wrong, and, it's never going to change for Canadians, and every generation will be poorer and more in debt than the one before it, because the wealthy first class needs to keep filling their pockets, getting stronger, helping their colonial buddies all over the world. That's what's happening now, and it's starting to happen in the United States. I don't think it's going to last too much longer, because the people are going to say, "You're out, Joe Biden. Take your crown-loving ass and get the hell out of here." That's what's going to happen. I keep continually hearing people keep bringing up, even in academia, I heard it today again. I tried to tell them, when you talk about the environmentalism and the Green New Deal, and we got to worry about the environment, you're strengthening the crown, because that's where it's birthed. This socialism, this autocracy of it comes from the crown royal family. And I hope Republicans start to highlight it. They don't. Conservatives don't, because they don't want to lose the crown. They'll never highlight it, not in Canada, not in any of the colonial countries. But you'd think the Republicans would start to get on it. At least look at your histories of war. Anyone who wants to try to dispute anything I've said, look at the history of American wars. 16 against crown colonials, 6 versus communists. Who's the biggest threat? The lion's share of the financial cost and the lion's share of lives lost belong to the crown colonials. Americans have given their lives in the fight against the crown 100 to 1 compared to their wars against the communist states. But yet that is the narrative. That's the big fear. Somebody's filling in propaganda. Ooh. Wasp. Jeez, I hate those things. Good riddance. I didn't want to get stung. Jeez, get out of here, you little bugger. I'm going to get stung by this prick. Okay, guys, that's my video today. Enjoy your day. Lots to do, and I got to get back to writing. Bye now.